The Arizona sun hung like a brass coin in the merciless sky as James McCall's horse collapsed beneath him. 3 days of running, 3 days of thirst. 3 days since he'd killed Colonel Harrison Blackwood's nephew in a gunfight that everyone saw but no one would testify about. The truth didn't matter anymore, only blood mattered now. James crawled toward the shadow of a canyon wall, his lips cracked and bleeding. The desert would claim him before Blackwood's cavalry ever could. Perhaps that was mercy. Better to die under the open sky than at the end of a rope, with Blackwood's cold smile being the last thing he ever saw. Then he heard them footsteps soft as whispers on the wind. 3 Apache women emerged from the rocks like vengeful spirits. They moved with predatory grace, their dark eyes assessing whether he was worth saving or better left for the vultures. The leader stepped forward, her long black hair catching the dying sunlight. She was perhaps 26 with the bearing of someone who had survived what should have killed her. "You run from the blue soldiers," she said in flawless English. Her voice carried the weight of certainty, not question. James nodded, his hand moving instinctively toward his revolver before an arrow point pressed against his throat. The second woman, athletic and fierce, with eyes that burned with controlled fury, held the bow steady. A warrior's hands, scarred from bowstring and blade. "We are Chiricahua Apache," the leader continued. "I am Nahale, this is Kimi, and that is Nascha." She gestured to the third woman, younger but no less dangerous, who circled him like a wolf, studying wounded prey. "We know Colonel Blackwood. He destroyed our village 8 moons ago, killed our families, burned our children alive in their beds." The hatred in her voice was a physical thing, thick enough to choke on. James understood then that fate had thrown them together. 3 Apache women seeking vengeance, and a white man fleeing injustice. All bound by a common enemy who wore a cavalry uniform and called himself righteous. "My ranch," James rasped, his throat raw. 2 days north, hidden in the mountains, stone walls, water, ammunition. "Blackwood doesn't know it exists. If you help me reach it, you'll have sanctuary. And when he comes, because he will come, we face him together." The 3 women exchanged glances, speaking in their native tongue with words that flowed like water over stones. Finally, Nahale knelt and offered him water from a leather pouch decorated with intricate beadwork. "We accept, white man, but understand this: you are not our protector. We are yours. You would already be dead without us." She was right. Over the next 2 days of travel through hostile territory, James witnessed capabilities that humbled him. Nahale tracked invisible signs in the sand, reading the land's secrets like others read books. Kimi brought down a pronghorn at impossible distance, her arrow finding its mark with devastating precision. Nascha, despite being the youngest at 5, possessed an awareness that saved them twice from Comanche scouts, rival tribes who would have killed them all without hesitation. But it was more than their survival skills that captivated James. Around the campfire each night, he learned their stories. Nahale had been a healer in her village, her hands skilled at mending wounds, both physical and spiritual. Kimi had trained as a warrior alongside the men, earning respect through skill rather than birthright. Nascha had been preparing for her marriage ceremony when Blackwood's soldiers attacked, her intended dying with an arrow in his back as he tried to shield children. "The Comanche call us the enemy," Kimi said one night, her face illuminated by firelight. "The Navajo fear us, the Mexicans curse our names, but it is the white soldiers we hate most. They lie with treaties in one hand and torches in the other. Blackwood is the worst of them," Nascha added, her young voice carrying an old soul's bitterness. "He collects Apache scalps, pays his men bounties for them. Children's scalps pay the same as warriors." James felt shame burn through him, not for his own actions, but for his people's sins. "When he comes for me, he'll bring everyone. He'll want to make an example." "How many?" Nahale asked. 200 riders, maybe more. The entire territorial cavalry if he can muster them. He'll surround the ranch and demand my surrender." "Our surrender," Kimi corrected, her hand finding his shoulder. "We are bound now. Your war is our war." On the third day, they reached James's ranch, a fortress built into the mountainside by a paranoid prospector who died of snakebite before enjoying his security. Stone walls 3 feet thick, a natural spring inside, rifle slots cut at strategic angles, a single entrance that could be defended by one person against dozens. As sunset painted the sky blood red, they stood on the porch, looking down at the valley approach. Any army coming for them would be visible for miles. "They will come like a flood," Nahale said quietly. "Blackwood will make a circle of horses and men around this place. He will starve us out if he cannot burn us out." "Let them come," James replied, checking his rifles. "These walls have stood for 20 years. We have enough ammunition for a siege and enough water for months. Blackwood will learn that some men and some women cannot be broken." What none of them knew, as darkness fell and the first stars emerged, was that Blackwood's scouts had already spotted them. Even now, riders carried word across the territory. The colonel was gathering his forces, fueled by rage and the promise of vengeance. The siege was coming, and before it ended, the desert sand would drink deep of blood, both Apache and white, innocent and guilty alike. In 3 days, 200 riders would encircle this ranch, and 4 souls inside would face them all. Colonel Harrison Blackwood assembled his 200 cavalrymen at dawn, declaring that James McCall, accused of killing his nephew, was hiding with 3 Apache women of the Chiricahua band. He promised justice, but made it clear that the women would be taken for interrogation, and that the desert could erase anyone who resisted. When his lieutenant pointed out that witnesses claimed the nephew drew first, Blackwood dismissed it entirely. Vengeance was the only truth he cared about. Meanwhile at the ranch, James and the 3 Apache women, Nahale, Kimi, and Nascha, turned the stone house into a fortress. As they prepared, James asked what Blackwood had done to their village. The women revealed the massacre. Cavalry surrounded their homes at dawn, set fires to flush people out, and gunned down anyone who ran. 63 died. Children were executed because Blackwood ordered no witnesses. The 3 survived only because they had been hunting in the mountains. When they returned, they found soldiers scalping the dead while laughing, with Blackwood calmly watching from horseback. They explained that this pacification mirrored what was happening to other Apache bands, Mescalero, Chicarilla, Lipan, and even other Chiricahua groups. Blackwood had made the extermination of Chiricahua people his personal mission. He collected Apache scalps like trophies, including 63 from their destroyed village. They also described the wider conflicts of the region: Comanche enemies to the north, Navajo to the west, Mexican patrols to the south. Americans everywhere pushing tribes into starvation or extinction. Only leaders like Geronimo still fought, fueled by tragedies far greater than their own. Later, on the porch under the emerging stars, James asked Nahale why she had saved him. She answered that he carried honor, something rare in a land ruled by men like Blackwood, and reminded him that they had witnessed the duel. James had tried to avoid killing the boy. The boy had chosen death. Before James could respond, Kimi called out, "Riders on the south ridge. Scouts, they had been found." The warning would reach Blackwood by morning. At sunrise, more than 200 cavalrymen appeared on every ridge, forming a suffocating ring around the ranch. Colonel Blackwood rode forward and demanded their surrender, promising a fair trial. James stepped onto the porch, with the 3 Apache women standing proudly behind him, and shouted back that Blackwood was brave only when murdering sleeping villages. That now he faced people who could shoot back. Blackwood, enraged, gave them 1 hour. After that, he would attack with no mercy. The siege had begun, and none of them, not James, nor the last 3 survivors of their Chiricahua village, expected to leave the battlefield alive. The hour before the attack passed with heavy tension as James McCall and the 3 Apache women fortified the stone ranch, taking positions at narrow rifle slots. Kimi predicted Blackwood would probe their defenses first, and she was right. 20 riders approached, circling just outside rifle range. When they charged as a feint, Kimi fired once and dropped a man, forcing the rest to retreat. Blackwood, watching from afar, hadn't expected such precision. The cavalry shifted strategies, building firing positions and barricades while maintaining constant pressure that kept James and the women pinned down. Blackwood clearly intended a long siege, but James realized the colonel couldn't afford to wait forever. His superiors would question why 200 soldiers were needed to capture 1 man. He would strike before sunset. During a lull, James asked Nahale about her past. She described training as a medicine woman before Blackwood's men massacred her village. Her grandmother died shielding children from bullets. James shared his own war scars, admitting he had never found peace after serving in the Civil War. Despite the looming danger, a quiet understanding formed between them. A white flag soon appeared. Lieutenant Burke approached, offering Blackwood's terms. James would surrender, the Apache women would be taken into custody, and bloodshed would end. James refused. Burke confessed he knew what had happened in the village and was powerless to oppose Blackwood, who held immense influence. He left with regret, warning James that riders had been sent to nearby settlements. No matter what happened, James would be hunted. Night fell, and the cavalry lit a full circle of campfires around the ranch, turning the valley into a glowing prison. Inside, the 4 defenders shared food and stories. Nascha sang a war song, Kimi recounted Apache raids, Nahale prepared medicines. James cleaned his rifles in grim silence, burdened by memories of the men he had killed in war, and by the knowledge that many more deaths were imminent. Later, Nahale joined him on watch. She told him not to dwell on what could have been, reminding him that violence had already shaped all their lives whether they wanted it or not. What mattered now was fighting for something worth protecting. She leaned against him, and across the room, Kimi and Nascha exchanged unreadable glances. They were for people bound together by tragedy, necessity, and a loyalty that had become something like family. All around them, 200 soldiers waited for dawn. Blackwood would attack with everything he had, and the 4 defenders knew the next day would bring fire, blood, and possibly death. But for the few quiet hours before sunrise, surrounded by enemies and uncertainty, they found strength in their shared bond. Tomorrow they would fight. Tonight they endured together. Dawn split the sky like a wound, bleeding red across the horizon. James hadn't slept, none of them had. They kept watch in shifts, but rest was impossible, with 200 hostile men encircling them, waiting for the kill order. It came at sunrise. Colonel Blackwood rode forward on his black stallion, saber raised. Even from afar, James saw the cold fury on his face. One dead soldier, public defiance, and a long night of failure had shredded the colonel's pride. Attack! Blackwood roared, his voice rolling across the valley like thunder. The cavalry split into 4 units, 50 soldiers each, assaulting from every direction at once. Overwhelming force meant to confuse the defenders and break their lines. Horses thundered forward, riders firing rifles and pistols, their cries merging into hellish noise. North wall, James shouted. Nahale joined him, firing steadily. A cavalryman fell, then another, but more surged forward. On the east wall, Kimi fired with perfect control. Every shot hit. 3 men fell before the first wave reached 50 yards. Nascha held the south wall alone, singing her war song, her shots driven by grief and fury. The west wall belonged to Nahale when she wasn't supporting James. She fought with calm precision, cutting out infection to save what she loved. Dan Blackwood's men were an infection. The first wave broke like surf on stone. 20 men down, the rest retreated in confusion, stunned to find disciplined, deadly defenders instead of frightened targets. Reload, James called. They'll be back in minutes. They returned smarter. The second wave advanced behind wooden shields, dismounted soldiers pushing forward while mounted riders provided covering fire. A bullet punched through the rifle slot, stone fragments slicing James's cheek. Nahale treated him even while firing one-handed. "I'm fine, keep shooting," he snapped. The shields reached the walls. Pickaxes hammered stone, torches flew onto the roof. The noise was overwhelming: gunfire, screams, the pounding of wood and metal. Nascha stumbled in, bleeding from a graze. They're ramming the door. James fired through a slot, killing one attacker, but another took his place. Above them, soldiers climbed the walls using ropes and grappling hooks. Nahale, Nascha, hold the walls. Kimi, with me. James and Kimi rushed to the roof. James shot one climber off instantly. Kimi cut ropes and dropped soldiers with lethal grace. A soldier tackled James, nearly throwing him off the edge, but James fought with desperation and sent him falling to the ground below. More soldiers climbed up. James dropped 2 before his pistol clicked empty. A scarred sergeant leveled his rifle. Kimi's arrow pierced his throat before he could fire. "How many more?" James gasped. "Dozens. We can't hold long." Below, the battering ram splintered the door. Soldiers flooded the main house. "Fall back to the spring room," James ordered. "One entrance. Best ground we've got." They retreated to the stone-reinforced cave at the ranch's heart. 50 cavalry soldiers stormed the house, but found only narrow stonework leading to the defenders. The first man through died instantly. The second fell, a third hesitated, and an officer ordered a retreat. "Status," James demanded. "Low ammo," Nahale said. 50 rounds, maybe. 10 arrows left, Kimi added. Nascha wiped blood from her ribs. "I can fight." Outside, Blackwood screamed orders. He'd lost over 40 men to 4 defenders. His reputation was ruined. He'd show no mercy now. "Then we take him with us," James said. "I've got 1 bullet saved for the colonel." 2 more assaults failed. The doorway was too narrow, the defenders too accurate. Soldiers grew afraid they hadn't signed up to die this way. At last Lieutenant Burke approached. "McCall, last chance. Surrender and the Apache women live. You'll hang, but they'll be spared." James looked at the women. Each shook her head. "We're together," Nahale said. "Tell Blackwood to go to hell," James shouted. "And Burke, tell the truth when this is over." The lieutenant's voice broke. "I will. I'm sorry." The 4 sat together in the dim spring room. They'd fought fiercely, but the numbers were impossible. "No regrets," James said. "You gave me purpose again, and you gave us justice," Nahale replied. "Family," Kimi whispered. "Home," Nascha added. Outside, Blackwood prepared a final, total assault. No survivors. James checked his last bullet, Blackwood's bullet. The attack would come at dawn. They had 1 night left.
The night before the final assault, James, McCall, and the 3 Apache women, Nahale, Kimi, and Nascha, waited in the spring room while 200 cavalry soldiers surrounded the ranch. In the candlelit quiet, they spoke about death, the Apache afterlife, their families, and the meaning of sacrifice. Despite knowing dawn meant their likely deaths, they faced it with calm acceptance and unity. As morning approached, Blackwood prepared his last attack. The defenders, nearly out of ammunition, vowed to make every shot count. When the assault began, they held the narrow doorway with stubborn precision, dropping soldiers even as the cavalry pushed forward. James used his final bullet to wound Colonel Blackwood, knocking him from his horse. Then something unexpected happened. The soldiers hesitated. Lieutenant Burke stepped in, refusing to let Blackwood continue the slaughter. The men, shaken by the brutality they had witnessed and the truth of the village massacre, lowered their weapons. Burke relieved Blackwood of command, declared the defenders' actions self-defense, and promised to report the colonel's crimes to Washington. Blackwood was arrested, and the battle ended without further bloodshed. James and the 3 Apache women walked out alive, having survived impossible odds. News of their stand spread, becoming a symbol of courage and justice. James kept his ranch, and Nahale, Kimi, and Nascha remained with him, forming a family forged in survival and loyalty. Though the Apache wars continued, their victory became a legend. How 1 cowboy and 3 Apache women held off 200 soldiers, exposed a corrupt officer, and proved that honor and humanity could still triumph in a violent land. If you enjoyed this dark tale of courage and survival, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Share this story with friends who appreciate dramatic historical narratives. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought about James, Nahale, Kimi, and Nascha's incredible stand against impossible odds. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next dark story. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the greatest victories come not from the strongest weapons, but from the strongest hearts.